Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Shred the Veil. I'm Daniel here with my brother Derek. And as always, we are here to question the mainstream narrative to find out what's really going on behind the scenes. Today, we're really excited to have a guest with us, Mr. Sean Stone. Sean is a filmmaker, media host, author, actor, poet, speaker, and also a truth seeker and a spiritual activist. Sean's got a really interesting background, including being a child actor in some of his father's films, Oliver Stone. He also went to school for American history and wrote a thesis on the New World Order. He's hosted several shows himself, including Buzzsaw, Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura, and the RT News. And so we're really excited to have Sean on the show. And he's got a new series that just came out called The Best Kept Secret. So really excited about that. Sean, we just finished watching that this past week. I saw all 6 episodes. It's really amazing stuff you've got in there. Which put together.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess starting off, just kind of go with the flow here. We were curious to hear about your perspective and your experiences growing up in Hollywood, kind of on the inside, around your father's movie sets and acting in those movies. And, he had no problem speaking about subjects like war, violence, greed, power within the American culture. I guess, how did his viewpoints and stance on these various subjects shape your own as an influence in your life?
Sure. I've talked about this a lot, just how, growing up as a kid on film sets like Born on the 4th of July, Platoon, JFK, it's like you really you get a glimpse of, not just obviously in the film sets, but just watching those productions and the final movies, you get to see, the myths that essentially we as Americans oftentimes believe in, and we're sold, by movies, by our academic books. We're basically sold on mythologies. And so when you actually start to deconstruct the mythologies, I think that's what my father has really been so good at as a filmmaker, right? Was deconstructing mythologies and reassessing, especially contemporary history. All of his films, aside from Alexander, are about contemporary history within his lifetime, be it the Doors and the Born on the 4th of July and the Vietnam era, be it the 80s and the Wall Street and the talk radio era, or the 90s and the Natural Born Killers, Any Given Sunday. So essentially, he helped me to deconstruct myths by looking more deeply at things, by trying to working to study, you name it, history, philosophy, psychology, all these things that I think I was provoked by at a young age, because I didn't believe in the media narrative. And so that was really one of the first things to my youth, was realizing how much of media is false narratives concocted, with certain agendas in mind. How much of the world is controlled by the financial rulers, who are, behind the Black Rocks and the Vanguard and State Streets and these big companies that are, the majority stockholders of the major corporations. And then, if you have the financial interest, well, you also can buy politicians. You can, the CIA has long had a history with Wall Street, and notoriously was involved in coup d'etats and activities against countries around the world for economic interests. So you start to really look behind the scenes a little bit to say, cui bono, as they say, like who benefits from any of these, name it, wars, conspiracies, major events that occur.
Yeah,
exactly. I was just going to say that JFK was like so amazing to me, just as growing up watching it, and then just watching it in the past few years after things that have been coming to light and kind of really diving deeper. But it paints a very different picture from what we're taught, obviously. And that's where the word conspiracy theorist came from, right? From that whole that whole situation. And the fact that there's so many things to talk about in that perspective, but I was really happy when that came out and really exposing another side that we never see in the day-to-day.
Yeah.
So we're also curious, having that questioning the narrative. I'm sure you started that at a very young age with being influenced by your father. I guess, were you aware of the darker side of Hollywood at a young age? Did your father warn you about any of that, or? Um,
No, not particularly like the darker side of Hollywood. I mean, you could say that um, in some ways, yes, like the darker side not being pedophilia, or that's I'm talking more like the machine, that this, especially by the 90s, the conglomerates were starting to buy up the studios. I mean, essentially the studios have been already gone through these various periods of being bought and sold, right? From the Japanese to the oil companies, right? All these different monies coming in to sort of to buy up studios. But then it became more and more consolidation of media, to the place where, what was it, like a few years ago, it was like five companies, five mega corporations own like 90% of the media that you see. And so maybe Netflix comes in as like a new company, but then Disney consolidates and buys Fox, so it's like you're just seeing more and more consolidation over the time period, which means that, again, the control of the narrative gets easier in a sense, right? Because you understand, the reason that I did a show called Buzzsaw, that came from a book written by it was a collection of journalists called Into the Buzzsaw. And it was basically journalists exposing their experiences with trying to tell stories that were ultimately crushed by the editor class, right? So the editor class being sort of beholden to the board, right, that oversee, you name it, the major newspapers, or ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, all these different news conglomerates. And the journalists, in this case, I saw it with my own eyes back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, when that TWA Flight 800 crashed. And it was ultimately, I mean, there was a documentary recently about how it was not just a fluke crash. It was some kind of missile or something that actually like knocked it out of the air. And my dad was trying to produce a special about it with this journalist back in the early 2000s, I believe. And ABC, I think it was ABC, or I don't want to misspeak, but like it was one of these 3-letter, not agencies, but networks. He basically crushed the series, because again, it's like, well, the conglomerate says that's too conspiratorial. So that's what you see. Like, that's what I got to see as a kid, where things like this, some of the decision-making process, just some of the things that go on behind the scenes, as far as, what people ultimately see has been sort of, let's say, tampered with, or affected, influenced by many people along the way. Now, my dad came up at a time when it was still like there were still independent filmmakers, and he very much was that when he made Platoon. It wasn't like he got studio backing. Also, his movie El Salvador, about the U.S. Involvement in suppressing the revolutionaries in El Salvador, and basically the fomenting of death squads and things like this. So my dad came from that more independent background, but once you get into the studio system, there's just, it can be very excruciating, I think, for a creative person. And that's why most people, I believe, operating in Hollywood are they're just business people. They're like, they've kind of given up a lot of their aspirations as artists and dreamers, and they know how to operate in a transactional way.
Yeah, that's so sad to know that that's the case, and people that there's so many actors, and I remember friends that did that and went out to California, want to become an actor and all that, and I think they quickly they're sorely mistaken about how that industry works and what you have to do to move up. And of course, people now, with all the allegations of the type of abuse and just really really dirty things that have to go on for you to get ahead. And that goes into more of the mind control and that conspiracy stuff too. But I was going to say, even the politics, of course, they're bought and paid for to say what they're going to say, do what they're, have that narrative that can only be seen one side or another. But that even goes when I was going to mention the vice president, just getting these child actors, right, to sit around and talk to her about how she's very excited about going to space or whatever the case is. Like, it's ridiculous, right? So
I didn't see that.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. And then so that leads to another topic. I mean, just why, with all that's going on, and that we'll kind of get into the disturbing things of from one side to the next, from the border issue to, you know, other wars that are about to start and blow up all over our face. But we're paying attention to these billionaires shooting rockets off into space. Like, that's, you know, that should take our attention away. And hey, look over here. There's nothing bad going on, you know, that we have to worry about, right? Distractions. That's another current event that just seems so crazy to me. Why are we focusing on things like that? There's so much more going on, right? So it's,
yeah, a lot of distractions out there to hide the truth. Yeah.
Well, that's how magic always worked. You know, it was look over here while we set up the next, you know, the trick. I was already, how do you say, we've already set the trick, or we're setting up that trick over there while we make you look over here. Yeah,
exactly. For the next, if we try to go, we have a couple of questions. The next one that I wanted to touch upon too, in that same regard, in the movie making industry back when you were still growing up, and it's steered into that darker side of things. That I look at your father and what he did as being he's very brave, courageous for that all the time period he was making movies and stepping out and having a voice. The only other director that kind of did that in his own way was, I would say, Stanley Kubrick. And I guess we know what happened to Stanley Kubrick. I mean, most people, I don't know if they know, he died, maybe of health issues, maybe not, but it was shortly after making Eyes Wide Shut, right? So that was a very controversial movie. And obviously it did not seem like it was like the final unedited edition or that Kubrick would have wanted released. It was obviously like basically stripped away, and all these things that were left out because it was just such a weird movie when it came out. But there were so many talking points of this darker side of the elites, of this culture that exists, right? Maybe not just in Hollywood, but in Washington, D.C. and all these places like that. I just got to get your take on that.
I didn't find it that. I mean, I don't necessarily buy into the idea that there was all this, you know, stuff that was going to be put in that was left out. I feel like the story was coherent. In fact, when I read the book by the his co-writer on the film, the co-writer wrote a book called Eyes Wide Open, I believe, and it's interesting that the co-writer originally delivered so much more content as far as the script goes, and he's like, this was, you know, whatever he delivered, I don't remember, 200 pages, you know, 200-page script or something epic, right? And Kubrick like boiled it down to like 50 pages or something. And you know, I just, again, I don't know that I buy that there was like some, you know, amazing thing that was hidden, because it does, to me, the film is coherent and does reflect the way that Kubrick sees things. And I've talked to Vivian, his daughter, about it. And again, I just don't know what would be in that footage that people expect it's going to be like pedophilia or something. But I can't, you know, that's so. He already did that. He already did with Lolita. Lolita was all about pedophilia, you see.
Right.
I don't think that was the point. You know, the point was the mystery of how this world works, and, you know, how the elites work, and leaving the audience really wondering. Obviously, you know that they can stretch out and touch you, and that's why the mask is on Tom Cruise's bed when he comes home, right next to his wife. Yep. But, you know, again, the mystery of whether or not that girl that basically replaces him in the ritual, if she was murdered or if she died of a drug overdose, you know, it is very much, you know, Kubrickian in the sense of it's up to you to decipher and to decide for yourself what you believe. What was interesting actually is when reading the book about the author of, I'm sorry, reading the screenwriter's book about writing Eyes Wide Shut, what seems to have actually attracted Kubrick to the subject was not so much just exposing the elite as people think. Kubrick was very much interested in the idea of what it is to be, you know, what is love in a marriage, essentially, right? That was the core for him, was this experience of love. And it was based on it's based on a book. Eyes Wide Shut is based on a book you can look up from the 19th century, and it was written, about Vienna, right, and the sort of this experience of a man one night, but like the whole thing was Cruz and Kidman are essentially having some troubles maybe in their relationship and their marriage. Are they sexually attracted to each other? Kidman talks about having sexual fantasies for another man. It arouses Cruz's character's sexual fantasies. So the whole point of the movie was really about this sort of nocturnal journey through sexual arousal. And don't forget, Lily Sobieski's character in Eyes Wide Shut was meant to be underage. You see, that was the pedophilic thing, that basically the father was willing to pimp his own daughter, right, for money. And Kubrick, it wasn't hidden. It was just right there. It's like everything, whatever they said, there was a line, like everything has a price, or they worked out a deal or an arrangement. That was the point. It was not to say, and he said Kubrick got I think he made the points that he wanted to make, is my point. I don't know that there's something missing that's going to be like, wow, this is a huge revelation that had to be cut out. I don't necessarily believe that.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that he said his points, and that's probably why he's I think no longer with us, because he got too close to certain topics maybe. But
who knows? It's like it's interesting about life, right? In many ways, 2001 A Space Odyssey, I think, predicts what came in with 2001, our year 2001, because it does feel like we've been taken over by some kind of artificial intelligence. It does feel like we're in this sort of matrix reality of not only interfacing, through smartphones and whatnot, but also just sort of the holographic. It's going to become increasingly holographic. Let's say it's going to become increasingly virtual. And it's been going that way for 2 decades. So 2001 really was the demarcation in a way to this, synthetic Siri version of reality. And it's just going to continue to grow in that direction. And that's very much what the transhuman thing is about too, which is the merging of man with machine, which is just inevitable. But at the same time, who chooses it? That's really what's I think at stake right now in this, right. In the battle, even though people don't even realize it yet that they're choosing it. There are many people that haven't realized yet that they have acquiesced to the idea of merging with, let's say, computing technology.
Yeah, I think we have in a lot of ways with our phone tied to our hip most of the time.
Oh, it won't stop there, is my point. You see, it's not going to stop there. But unless you say, okay, I do not accept this idea of being merged with machinery. That's an individual choice, but people don't even realize in many ways that they are acquiescing to, once you surrender your body's sovereignty by saying you can inject me with this technology that affects my genetics, that affects my protein production, for example, right? You are basically beginning the long journey of merging yourself with computing technology. If people can't grasp it yet, it's okay. It's you'll see in about 10 years what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have, before you're going to give up your rights to allow this to happen, you have to question what's the motivation and who's in control of it, and what's their agenda behind it, and where are they going with it. And you touch on that in The Best Kept Secret a little bit, about the transhumanism agenda and the control that I guess in a nefarious sense over the population that they want to have to, I guess, ultimately come to some type of AI hive mind kind of mentality, so that there's, no one thinks for themselves anymore.
It's easier to control people when they don't have a voice, and they're expensive when they have freedom to choose, right? It's more expensive for the elite and people in power, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that may be the reason. I don't think that's so much about money. I don't think it's about money. I think that there is something more spiritual at work here.
Yes.
There's something more, and it's more nefarious, because profit can only get you so much. You see, like it's like that whole thing, like how many yachts can you water ski behind, right? That was the line from Wall Street. But obviously, it's just meant to to provoke the question, it's not so much about money at that point. Once you're talking Gates and company, I mean, this guy, what is profit to him when you have
Right.
when you're the richest man in the world? Why is he's this guy who's claims to be interested in Africa? If you're so interested in helping third world countries, why aren't you building infrastructure and irrigation systems and employing people and building out farms? Why are you so fixated on sticking people with these injections? That's not what health is. Health is not getting shot. That's such a
Right.
backwards way of looking at health. There's something else. But who is Gates? Gates is a computer programmer. What is the ideology of transhumanism? It's the idea that humans are basically computers. So what's the fastest way if you want to start to affect the human being? Inject things into the bloodstream, start to get into genetic therapies, get into CRISPR, genetic editing. This is treating the human as a biocomputer. And again, this is more their ideology than saying like, hey, let's create like, I don't know, like let's detoxify the world. Let's stop spraying crap into our water, in our air. Let's start to and all these. Why is Gates such an investor in Monsanto? Genetic modification of crops. Really, you think that's the healthiest option for the human being? I don't.
Right. It's not. It's crazy. No.
Yeah, that's such a great perspective that a lot of people really don't see and step back to realize, then put all those pieces together. But just how you put it, it's so obvious that there's something else, a different agenda, different motivation there.
And I definitely get to that side of the story because I mean, eventually you do talk about that within your new series and this spiritual side, the archons, and I kind of maybe touch upon what your definition of the archons is, I guess, in a sense to start with.
It's not my definition. I mean, the archons are spoken of in the sort of the Gnostic, Gnostic texts. But essentially it's rulers. It's a Greek word, right? So it's the rulers that are unseen in this world. They're beyond three-dimensional sight. And John Lamb Lash, who's written on the subject a lot, he explains that he's like, oftentimes when they were seen, they were expressed in sort of dragon reptilian form, or like gray aliens. It's weird, like the gray, big, bug-eyed, large head aliens. So archons are essentially, you could describe them as mind parasites. They parasite. Do they feed on humans? Do they actually? They create holographic projections. They use abduction and things like this to sort of, you name it, to potentially manipulate the genetics of humans. I mean, there's a lot of things about I didn't get into it in the series. The whole issue of the alien abductions and how they're actually creating hybrids. Which is not always a bad thing either. It's like, the human being I believe has been an experimental race since the beginning. I believe we are, the missing link, is alien DNA. We are born of probably multiple different, species of aliens, or what would be alien to this world, but actually, for the solar system, from the galactic perspective, we're all have an affinity, right? That's why we can experience and know each other. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the hybrid programs are real. I think a lot of people that you see, especially in the industries like Hollywood and music, but let's just say that there are beings all around that are hybrids that, they're like, how do you say? It's just been a gradual process, let's say, of transformation of the human being. And what the ultimate human being is going to look like, who knows? Because we have transformed so much in the course of being on this planet, let's say. That's why the legends of giants and whatnot, I believe very much in that. The human, obviously we know that we had cousins like the Neanderthals and others that, didn't survive, right? Cro-Magnon, that kind of things, but would have looked different than the modern human. And, even now you travel around the world, you go, wow, humans do look very different. It's, what do you have, these giant 7-foot guys next to little people that are like 4'10", and you're going, wow, it's kind of, yeah, there's something, they say, it's not to say like they're not all hybrids, I'm saying, but just like, it's very interesting how the human, there's so many different forms of what it is to be human. And I think it's just going to continue to increase. The contrast will continue to increase, I believe, in the coming centuries.
I think that's interesting. The concept of the hybrid and how that can shift who we are as beings spiritually from a soul perspective. When we talk about the archons and feeding off of our lower frequency vibrations, it's like an energy battle. They're thriving on these thoughts of anger, depression, anxiety, fear, all these things that bring us down and lower our vibration. And then on the other side of that is the very high vibrational energies of love and acceptance, and getting to that, the Tibetan rainbow body sense of perfection to get to the next dimension on a spiritual level. It's just interesting to think where a transhumanism kind of hybrid type of person will fall on that spectrum, and if it would inhibit the human's ability to evolve spiritually and to ultimately get those higher vibrations and stay in that space, or it would enhance that. It's I guess it depends on who's pulling the strings and
who's control of the program,
kind of sovereignty you maintain with that.
Yeah. Well, I trust that nature wins, no matter how much manipulation goes on at a synthetic level. Manipulation of electromagnetic frequencies, for example. It's like nature will always prevail on this planet.
Yeah, most definitely. I was talked with Laura Eisenhower before, and she talks about bifurcation a lot, and that's kind of like the splitting of timelines, right? And we kind of see that happening. I mean, what I think about America, or a lot of places in the world, but America for sure is like a crippled schizophrenic. Like they're physically disabled and they're mentally, completely unstable. Obviously, as if you consider it as an organism, as a human body, one's fighting the other side constantly. There's no cohesive thought or any unity and cohesion that you need just to survive, just to thrive as a life form. But when you put in those perspectives, it's crazy that we're at this level. But you can see that happen with the people that think transhumanism is a great idea, that AI is the answer. And science is just starting to make all these chimeras for what purpose? Just because they can? Like when do you start to actually put some morality into it, and what should and shouldn't be done, and why do we leave it up to these so-called experts or those authority figures to tell us what should and shouldn't happen, right? That's where I think the transhumanism question is really having a problem, and has to do with those people that have the money and power to basically steer that whatever direction they want, right?
But again, you see, people have to remember, this is an experimental place. This is a land of experimentation. It's permissioned. If it's permissioned in the concept of free will, if it's permissioned, it will proceed, and it will proceed until it runs its course, even if it's a bad idea. You see, that's part of the experiment. It's like, you got to try the bad ideas too. Let it run its course. Let nature decide what will prevail. And that's why, I find a certain sense of peace in this whole situation, because it's like, well, listen, if you want to go out there and get a donut shot and you think you're healthier, fine. Let nature will always inform you. Right. It will give you a consequence. Everything has a consequence. Now, you can work with nature. You can detoxify. You can change your frequency. You can, raise your vibration with many, there are many means of doing so. But looking to artificial means of replacing nature will never be as efficient. It will never sustain the same way. So a lot of these things that are, at work now, I think it's like the bifurcation really is, go test it. Okay, you want to create 5G smart cities, EMF zones. You want to go live in a battery all day in a smart car, electric car, which is just a battery you're driving around in. See what it does to your body. You're gonna end up, like a withered little gray alien at the end of it. Maybe. You want to go with a mask in a smart car, like in a 5G EMF zone. You probably will end up unhealthy. You're not gonna, but that's part of the experiment. And that's the free will. Free will is an experiment. You get, you want to try it out. You can try it out as long as you want, as long as you can sustain it. Again, given that nature wins, you can't you can't defy death and the consequence of action. That's what karma is. Karma is not meant to be retributive. Retribution. How do you say? It's not retribution. It's simply consequence.
Yeah. Cause and effect. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Totally agree with that. And I think, like my brother said before, like now is the time to let the chaos ensue so that we can expose maybe the darker side of things and what really isn't in our best interest and not for us, but at least now it's being exposed, right?
It really is. It's like what serves, all the time. I look at people and they're like, they got the vaccine, they got COVID now, they're sick. And I'm like, how'd that shot do for you? Well, it reduced the symptoms. I'm like, yeah, just keep telling yourself that. Okay. I had the flu shot, didn't work. So I stopped taking it. But like you guys want to, you want to keep doing something, knock yourself out, see what happens. Everything is here, is to learn. That's it. So you learn. And sometimes it hurts. A lot of times it hurts.
Yes. I don't remember the last time I got a flu shot. I don't know, Dan, about you either, but why would I get a flu shot so I can feel sick when I don't get a shot and I feel healthy and never have a problem? So
and exactly. Or if I get sick, I get sick. And you know what? It's an opportunity for me to rest. Maybe it's an opportunity for me to like get in touch with my health. Am I doing, how do you say, am I treating myself right? Probably not. If I'm getting sick, I'm eating too much sugar, you name it. Like there's such a lack of awareness when it comes to the human being and like in relationship to their body and their health and their spiritual, emotional states. It's amazing to me. It's puzzling that, people just think, well, I'll just take a pharmaceutical or, get over it quick so I can get back to work. And it's like, so basically you're an energy, you're like plugging into the matrix basically. And it's like, as soon as you get drained, then you go and you get another, get a prescription for this, or you take that so you can keep being drained by the matrix. And then, you fall dead at like, in your 60s or, early 70s. It's like, and then you think that's normal. Sad.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah, it's amazing the unawareness that people have of what we'd think would be logic, critical thinking, just a questioning attitude, but it seems to be a lot lost. So, and that's why I think it's so important as these experiments, as you said, play out, and the more that we can educate people or shed light on what's really happening to open up their perception. I mean, the less casualties and suffering that we may have along the way as these experiments do play out. So I think that's really important to bring these things to light. And obviously, I think that's one of the points of your entire film here about the best kept secret was to get people thinking and open up some of their minds and kind of wrap their head around maybe this isn't the best thing I should be doing right now, right?
Well, connecting dots is always interesting. I've always had like an interest in connecting dots and looking at the big picture. Maybe not the best when it comes to details, but I like to sort of see the patterns and to, again, it's like you gotta, how do you say, create, that's how you see the constellation, right? I don't get lost necessarily in the forest. I want to step back and like, okay, let's look at the pattern here. What, what's shaping up? What are we seeing, repeated? And that's what the series offers as far as a total red pill journey, I would say.
Yeah, it's the biggest red pill I think that's going to be out there. I don't know. I've nothing before it is like it, and I don't know what's going to top that as far as just taking one giant red pill and saying, "Look at all that's out there. This is crazy." I'm so glad you did it, and I applaud you. And it's amazing that you went there to some of the depths that you went to, and we've talked about the pharmaceutical aspect of things, and of course we know how that's playing out. But what's not really talked about, and it's the last subject that will ever be touched, is really this child trafficking, human trafficking, pedophilia, these things that are very hard to talk about, but they're going to continue to happen unless we finally grow up and say, okay, we need to stop this. It's one way or another, right? That's
yes.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yes. Well, it's like, what can how do you create a culture that loves and protects. That's why I don't really like the word pedophilia. Pedophilia is loving children. There's nothing loving about what goes on with this harassment, sexual molestation, and rape of children. So how do we create a culture that actually loves and honors children? Well, certainly not by masking them all day and injecting them with poisons. So that's the thing. If you don't have a culture that fundamentally loves and protects and honors the child and looks at them and like says, you are the future, and I want to hear what you have to say and what you think and what your intuition tells you, because you are still closer to source than I am, actually, when you're coming out and you're young.
Yes.
And you're still in your in your imaginal states. Like, you got to listen to the kids. And the fact is, the fact that they're committing child abuse on a daily basis by like saying, here, I'm the parent, you have to get this injection, here, you have to put this on your face. That's all child abuse, because you're not even listening to what the child wants. It's just, I'm the boss. And then you feed them crap and, give them, GMO cereals full of sugar and other stuff. And it's just an awful approach to child rearing. But I think a lot of people are waking up to that, thankfully, and pulling their kids out of schools and realizing, hey, maybe this institutionalization is not what's healthiest for you.
Exactly.
It's getting harder and harder to normalize the, I guess, the abuse, in the sense of just, subjecting people and children to toxic environments through everything they eat, and making it just, this is how we live, and not knowing any better. But with the masks and with the shots, it gets more extreme. More people are questioning that a little bit, and I think that's what, as I've mentioned before, these are the catalysts that are necessary to wake people up, so that we can get back to a community that it does value, bring these values to the surface. Really, I know there are a lot of people who do value these things, but no one's speaking up about it, and they haven't had the need to. So I think, unfortunately, as this plays out, it's going to have to get worse before people come together collectively and make it better.
Yes.
Yeah, I see the kind of the karmic cycles like we talked about, in just the way parents are not sure how to parent, or they're I mean, not all parents are perfect, right? But there's stuff that they have to deal with and they have to go through in order to see the light and maybe understand the brainwashing that they were put under, so that they don't put it through their kids, don't put their kids through the same thing, right? So it's breaking that cycle. I think we're finally starting to do that as a society, as a collective, because our parents for sure have been brainwashed too. And it's generational, right? We're put into the system. So,
well, traumatized, traumatization of children is the cycle. You see, you traumatize children with language, with sometimes physical violence, sometimes sexual, and you traumatize the child, and then child grows up traumatized and continues that, how do you say, as basically has a certain react, how do you say, has created certain, you could say, it's both physical as well as psychological norms that the child then looks to as they're grown up, to basically think of the trauma, how do you say, to think of those experiences as normal. You've normalized traumatic events. So there's a whole psychology that comes out of this, right? And there's a whole response that comes out of this to how people then behave and relate to others. That's why, so many times it's like, they, how do you say, because they think it's normal to be in abusive relationships, as a result, or they may think it's normal to be in like states of anxiety and fear as a result. There's all these, how do you say, you essentially have created a traumatized being that, unless they work through the trauma and works to regulate the system, the nervous system, to be like, to find space and ease and calm, it's like they're just constantly looking for whatever it is, the adrenaline rush, you name it, the chemical response to systems of danger, I'm not expressing myself clearly here, but essentially you've normalized traumatic things or abusive things or chaotic structures to then grow up and make that your normal everyday life. And so it's essentially the matrix, in a sense, is designed in such a way that the trauma of the child feeds into the matrix once the child gets to an older age, and then looks to basically drugs, chemical drugs, especially like produced by pharma or whatnot, to stabilize themselves within a matrix system, as opposed to in a system where they feel more a sense of autonomy and inner peace and harmony and working with people that are healthy. Like, too many people are working with people that are toxic and they're okay with it because it's all about the money. So now you're in a position where, okay, your boss is telling you got to do this, if you want to keep your job, right? You want to get ejected if you want to keep your job. And it's like prompting people to say, wait a minute, do I really want to be in this relationship any longer?
Exactly.
So this is the point, right? It's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Yeah, employees are literally getting punched in the face and they're like, we don't need to take this abuse anymore. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, all over. And that's why there's so many strikes going on now, and like all these unions are about to strike. I mean, it's amazing. I think it's a great moment of being like, why are we buying into the system any longer?
Mm-hmm.
You need us.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Exactly.
sure, it should be reciprocal, but it doesn't feel that way right now.
Exactly.
It's so refreshing to see people standing up and speaking out right now. It's just makes it's a glimpse of hope in this self-perpetuating toxic matrix that we've been feeding into, just like you're describing. It's so nice to see the on a greater scale, finally people stepping up and speaking out. So hopefully that more of that's going to continue as these things progress and they keep trying to infringe on our rights and our liberties.
I would hope. Yeah, and I hope we would see more of that. I mean, we're seeing it on alternative media, but it's just not so prevalent on the news. Of course, they're not going to show us what's really happening, right? They want to try to.
And they never have.
Right.
They never have.
You know that very well. But yeah, I mean, Australia. I just saw more crazy riots in Australia. I think that's one of the major places, right? That's really going through a revolution.
I hope so, man. They need it.
Yeah.
They need it, because I was there multiple times. I was there in 2018 and then again in 2020. And I said, when I was there the first time, I was there to talk about the New World Order, and no one showed up to listen. No one cared. And I'm like, you guys are so brainwashed here.
Wow.
And you're so caught in this sort of like easygoing nanny state. The government has the right to tell us what to do. It was clear, like there was this friendly fascism, I call it, like friendly fascism. Just
that's so amazing that you could see it before.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay. I remember you went there. What time did you go there? What year was it?
I was there in 2018. I was there in 2020. I was there. Yeah. So I saw it in different contexts, and yep, it's time. People stand up, rise up, show them you have the power. Because at least in America, we have a principle that's enshrined in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence that promises us that, but we still have to earn it and own it. Yeah. In Australia, they don't have that. In Australia, they don't have it. In Canada, they don't have it. In England, they're just they're vassals. They're vassals of a state, literally, of a kingdom.
Right.
They're colony. Really. Still.
And that's the sad part about many Americans, and anybody in our age or younger that doesn't realize how fortunate they are to be in this country, and we have that law behind us. We have that written in our Constitution, but unless we fight for it, unless we preserve it, everything was for nothing. I mean, it's big.
Well, that's why you have to wonder. I mean, could they have pulled this off if the World War II generation were still alive? Mm-hmm. I don't know if they could have. Too many people actually went and fought in the greatest mobilization of arms and manpower and machinery in history, or modern, let's say, known history. So I don't know if they could have pulled that off. It took the boomers to kind of be more like, complacent. Right.
Yeah. Some other, whatever revolution they wanted at that.
Well, what they're playing upon also is a lot of guilt. They've been playing on this whole like liberal white guilt for a long time. You're guilty because you took this land. It doesn't belong to you. Well, I'm sorry to say, but every country has the same problem. Every country does. Every country is literally built on bloodshed. It's built on wars, ethnic violence. Every country.
Exactly.
Find me one that hasn't had this issue. So to
Yeah.
make it about America being the guilty, ugly, and all this, like the worst country in the world, all this nonsense. It's like study history, then
Yeah,
tell me
exactly.
that there was no conquest to form these what we now call countries.
Yeah, there's so many parallels to what's happening now with, what happened in Nazi Germany leading up to the Holocaust and things like that. I think the number of generations between now and then, for them to pull this off or to try to start this up again, I think that would be a challenge if it was, the Nuremberg trials and things like that people forget about. Would still be very fresh at that time, if they were trying to pull something like this off, as you said, like in World War II time frame. So,
yeah.
I was recently thinking about that. I was like, what a difference it would be if, like, after the Nuremberg trials, you see some of these survivors that are just barely still hanging on, but they're alive within the last 10 years. What if that was like mandatory for any known survivor to go through every school and classroom and sit there and tell them what they went through? I mean, that would make things a little bit different. You would hope for them to realize, like, this,
Well, you have actually a lot of survivors of communism that are here in America, and they're, I think, some of the biggest proponents, objectors to what's happening. They're basically they're out there sort of blowing the whistle, saying, listen guys, this is what happened, and this is what communism looks like in our countries, right?
Yes.
Because that was only 30 years ago the Soviet Union collapsed. So there are a lot of people that are from that region, especially I would say that Cubans, people like this, that will tell you, Venezuelans, like, hey, you don't want to go this direction. But again, you don't, they are being drowned out by, like I said at the beginning, a consolidation of, a few companies that own the mainstream media.
Exactly. Any other topics, Dan, or anything you want to maybe ask too before?
I mean, I think we've covered a lot on a lot of the topics that you did go into in the Best Kept Secret. I guess the timing and the making of that series is how long did that take to put together? And did you have that kind of on the back burner for a while, or were you waiting for that, or to pull the trigger to do it, or was it something that was very recently came up that inspired you to take this action to make this movie?
Well, what made it happen was Robert David Steele. Robert David Steele, who I've known for a few years. He wanted to do this documentary about pedophilia and empire. So he has a book series that he produced. It's just very important to read for people that want more of the facts about how pedophilia works with the politicians and the major businesses and whatnot. And then I wanted to do Best Kept Secret as a docuseries because I felt like there was just too much information to pack into one, and it ultimately took the course that it took, which is to expose the nature of control by the elite, across the board, whether it's pedophilia, whether it's mind control, transhumanism, devil worship, whatever you want to call it, these different forms of philosophies that ultimately coincide with this desire for worldly power. So that's where the docuseries took the shape it did. And then unfortunately, Robert David Steele passed away right before we released the film. Right at I don't even know if he probably never saw the final version. But I think he would have been proud of it. Yeah. But again, it's a loss. It's a loss. He was a real fighter in this, in exposing these things.
Yeah, I assume that's no accident why he passed when he did. I don't know. That's just me connecting dots, but I don't see that being just a coincidence. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he is what we talked about it with 107. It seems that he was intubated against his will, likely drugged or whatnot. But then again, this is what the hospitals. It's like the last thing. I don't understand why he went to the hospitals. That's that was his choice, and we've seen it way too often that the hospitals are not using protocols that we know can be effective, but they don't want to listen to it. I did an interview with Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough, one of these American frontline doctors who's treated thousands of patients, and And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, there is a protocol that is effective when it comes to COVID. And yeah, I don't know Robert's decision making, unfortunately.
That's a shame. I just got turned on to Peter McCullough and some of his information that he's putting out. He's a great person to follow for the audience who, if you're looking to get some real good information about what's really going on medically right now.
Yeah,
But,
he's wonderful.
Okay. No, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, Sean, is there any, what are you, I guess, next projects? Anything you're inspired to do right now? Any expansion on some of the topics that you covered in this docuseries?
Oh, I can't talk about the next projects yet. I will say that there is another documentary coming out that Robert also produced. Robert David Steele produced The Best Kept Secret, and he also produced a new documentary about Wall Street that I'm also producing called Masters of Illusion. And so that should be coming out in the next few weeks. And that's really just exposing the nature of how Wall Street operates between insider trading and fraud and you name it, corruption. So it should be a good couple hours. People like Ron Paul's in it, Max Kaiser, Naomi Prinz, a lot of good speakers.
Awesome.
We look forward to that one then. Definitely. Yeah. And you've done a lot of other extras, been in a lot of other extras, like movies recently too, I guess. What was the recent one called Night Walk? Is that right?
Yes, the last one I was in, Night Walk, came out this year. I star in it with Mickey Rourke and Eric Roberts, and it's a little indie film. You know, it's done for a small budget, but I play a man who's wrongfully convicted of murdering his love.
I still have to check that out. Definitely want to see it. And are you planning to do more kind of things like that?
You don't really plan. I mean, as an actor, it's like whatever when the opportunity comes, it comes to you. A film is a difficult thing to get made. So it's like Gordon Gekko said on Wall Street: a fool and his money are lucky enough to get together in the first place, right? You never know when a film project will come up. So yeah, I'm basically putting together a few things, but I'll just leave it at the Masters of Illusion. People to watch out for that documentary next.
Right. I'm sure there's going to be many more things that you're going to be coming out with. I mean, and again, I think you're amazing for what you're doing and what you're showing the world and what you've been doing all your life. It's great to watch you grow as I kind of going through my own journey, and we're at the same age. So it's nice to have a fellow peer that is so committed and doing the work. So thank you.
Thank you. You got it. Thank you guys. Really.
Yeah.
Certainly inspiration.
Yeah, and then Conscious Vitality, you also had just one other show or appearance on as well with them, or yeah.
Well, right. The name escapes me at the moment. Justin.
Justin.
Yes, that's his last name.
Yeah, so we'll look at that, and hopefully you'll do more on Conscious Vitality. We're happy to be here, and we can't believe that we have this opportunity, but being a freedom of speech, you don't have to be censored about anything you talk about. So it's
love that.
Amazing. Yeah. So hopefully you can join us more and get more content out there with us. Yeah.
Cool. That sounds good.
Thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate your time and everything you do to help, shine the light on this darkness and to help to wake people up so that we can go through the experience in a better light. So thanks a lot. And everyone, until the next episode, keep shredding the veil.